Good evening, all. We'll kick off in about a minute. Sending out the notification to let people know I'm up in here. Which, of course, I would be because this is where I live. But no, we're here. I've been posting a few articles just to kind of wet your whistle, and I don't assume anybody was going to sit and read through all of it. I try not to over prepare because if I do, I'm going to get too deep. And I try to keep these as light as possible. So I just posted the articles that I came across, and obviously I read some of each of them. And I'll make some reference. I won't go too deep into it again, because if I do, I'll get lost in the psychological stuff and all that. So I try not to do that for Thursdays. If you catch me on a Tuesday or a Wednesday in Bible study, that's different. Then we go really deep. But we're going to try to keep it light as we can, if possible. Some of these mentalities are kind of interesting. So that's why I posted articles. Some of you probably never heard of one or two of them. And there's one I'm going to save till middle to the end that I think most people probably think they've heard of, but it's interesting how it's described, because I promise you haven't heard it described the way, and I didn't post any articles on it on purpose because I didn't want you to get ahead of me. All right, so that being said, and I have it on my big screen, so I can kind of respond to a comment. Depending on the rhythm, I might be able to actually respond to comments here. So in terms of typing. But let's get into it. So tonight it's about mentalities. I posted this. I didn't feel like trying to type on my little cell phone that I use. But let me just read some of it. Mentalities. This week we will be discussing a word often used to describe a set of behaviors one may see in another. This is a very important distinction because these are not necessarily clinical or psychological labels being applied to said words, actions, and deeds of others. But more often than not, they are cultural, societal labels being applied by self-exalted, just a little dig there, therapists who believe they are witnessing a set of actions and deeds, words, actions, and deeds that merit labeling someone as having a certain mentality. Here's where we really want to focus. According to Merriam's and Webster's dictionary, the word mentality means a mode or way of thinking, full stop. A mode or way of thinking. Now, the first part of that I just wanted to read just because I really wanted to take a shot at people like myself and others who love to say, ooh, that's a ghetto mentality. Ooh, that's bougie. We have this thing inside of us where we love to label. As much as people talk about, oh, I don't need a label, I don't like labels. You were born and given a label. It's called your name. So labels is what you carry from birth to death. Is what they're going to put on your birth certificate. Is what they put on your birth certificate. Is what they put on your death certificate. You have a label. My label is Gabriel Matthews, and my nickname label is Gabe, right? So the notion of labels is not as evil as some suggest. But anyway, but this mentalities thing, not so much about labels, but it's quite interesting because, again, what is it dealing with? It's dealing with a set of words, actions, and deeds that reflect a way of thinking, a mode, not simply what you're thinking, but how you think it, how you come up with the conclusions that you come up with. How do you determine to act a certain way? How did you decide to be a certain thing? That's what mentality is really talking about. It's talking about, okay, looking at a set of things that Gabe is doing and going, he's of this kind of thinking or mentality. That's what the word is. And if you've watched any of these broadcasts, which I imagine you've watched at least one, you're watching this one, you've noticed I tend to like to get underneath. You always see me doing this. Get underneath a thing. Because most of us, I don't have a problem with people throwing around labels, but most labels don't ever get underneath a thing. Now let me get in trouble right out the box. King. Now I've personally asked people to stop calling me that. I've got on here and said don't call me that. And I'm going to tell you why, once again. Because that label, while I get why people are doing it, and I've heard the very nice, sweet explanations, because the black people came from a bad situation, and we were kings and queens over in Africa. Yeah, okay, some. But most of us don't come from kings and queens. We just don't. Okay, but that aside, the other thing is, but you think you're identifying a person when you see them, because pretty much it's black people who do this, and you go, king. Why? Because he's a male. But the problem with the label king or queen, in truth, is it doesn't actually get underneath. You just simply see a black man and go, king. A black woman, queen. Fix your crown, girl. But that doesn't speak to the actual mentality. See? It doesn't speak to the actual mentality. So you're going to call some young man you see a king because his skin is black. And he's a jerk. And he's a misogynistic pig. And he treats women like garbage. But you just king. You didn't even think. You didn't bother to get underneath the surface of what you see. So I am not a fan of people going king. Especially when I know they don't know me. I know what they mean by king, but they don't know me. So to call me something and they don't know me makes sense. Well, in that same way, to identify or to label someone as having a certain mentality really comes to me in the same place. Now, we'll get into different mentalities and we'll talk about it. And hopefully I can bring some light to why we may not want to be so quick to say somebody has a so-and-so mentality, especially bougie. You're going to love that one. Bougie. We keep calling people bougie, and I don't think we realize where that comes from and what it actually means. And so when we start calling people bougie, we're doing it because culturally, now see my point? Culturally, societally, community-wise, we just hear it, and then we see somebody acting a certain way, saying a certain thing, and we go, that's bougie. And what's even worse, people go, that's right, I'm bougie. And if you look at the article I posted, that's what the lady is doing. Well, if I'm bougie, I'm just bougie. So, believe it or not, there's something bigger going on here that I want to make sure in the beginning, before we get any deeper, that we recognize when we're doing this, when we're saying, that's ghetto. Again, that's one that goes a little deeper than most of us think. Oh, that's ghetto. Believe it or not, some of this stuff is actually psychological. Believe it or not, some of these are syndromes. They're not just mentalities. They're just not lighthearted identifications. No, these are syndromes and come with mental disorders. Uh-oh, Gabe went deep on you. But you should be used to that by now. You thought I was just going to get on here and make fun and, oh man, you know you bougie, oh you know you. No, I never do that. I never do that. The reality of it is when we're calling somebody bougie or of a bougie mentality or of a short man or Napoleon, that's an actual complex, by the way. That's a mental complex. When we're doing that, we really don't stop to think, are we speaking to something that is real or fictitious and therefore subjective because it's coming out of us? Do we really have a right to do that in our communities? Should we really do that? Should we really do that? Now, I told you I'm going to go at it deep. I always do. So from the jump street, before we get into these mentalities, we should really think about, first of all, much of this is subjective. Again, this is not necessarily clinical, though some of them have some very real clinical, psychological, mental disorder elements to them. Gabe, why don't you do something lighthearted? Why? I ain't wasting my time. You want to do something lighthearted, we could just talk on the phone. You know, if you just want to shoot the breeze, I don't come here simply to shoot the breeze. No, I come here to try to say some things to get us thinking about how we are engaging our community. Here's that C word again. How are we engaging our community? Like I told you, I'm not a fan of people calling me king, because I know typically the one who calls me that, I'm just being honest, doesn't know me. I already know somebody who calls me king doesn't know me. One, because they would know I don't want to be called that. So I already know. As soon as somebody says, "Oh, king," you don't know me. It's just, you may have had a conversation with me, but that's not knowing me. We may have even met in person. That's not knowing me. Because clearly, I want to be called Gabe. Clearly, since my name is Gabriel, but on my page, I call myself Gabe. What does that tell you? I want to be called Gabe. I'm even known as Pastor Gabe. Not Pastor Matthews, Pastor Gabe. Why? Because there's two other Pastor Matthews, my brother and my father. I want to be distinguished as Gabe. Whether you throw pastor on it, Mr. Gabe, dude Gabe, Gabe. And so I get the sneaky suspicion that a lot of times when we're throwing out these mentality labels, we're not really thinking about, one, what they actually mean. We're not thinking about what it says about us when we do it. Uh-oh. When we see somebody at the grocery store, we overhear somebody talking, we go, "Oh, that's just ghetto." We're not thinking about what the word we're saying, because we just assume that there is a general accepted view of those things. Come on. Come on. We just assume that pretty much everybody probably has the same thinking. If you notice, I do a lot about stuff like this. Again, the same thinking, but in fact, that's not really the case. And if you really want to judge where America, let me talk to Americans. If you really want to judge where we are as a country, the reason why we have so much disharmony, it's not just the big things like racism and all of that. No, I think even within a community of people of the same nationality, the reason why we can't pull it together. I'm not talking about coming to a funeral or going to a family reunion where you come together for a few hours and you kind of sit there and laugh a little bit, but then you don't talk to each other until the next one, or to the next wedding, or to the next funeral. You don't really talk to each other. You don't really connect with each other. And you're really quick, and we're really quick, not you, we're really quick to dismiss why we don't engage each other. And now think about what I'm saying, because we'll go, "Well, the reason why I don't talk to cousin Boo Boo is because she's so bougie." What does it say about the person who's saying it? "Well, Gabe, I'm down to earth." You obviously don't know what bougie means. Or you have a cultural definition. Now, don't get me wrong. Cousin Boo Boo might be difficult to deal with because Cousin Boo Boo has a way about her and how she carries herself. I'm with you. Cousin Boo Boo may carry herself or himself in such a way that makes them difficult to deal with. But the moment you start pulling up labels, mentality labels, and start laying them on people, you are becoming judge, jury, and executioner. Executioner, I'm not going to deal with them because of this label I'm giving them. No, Gabe, it's their behavior. No, it's your label. Because in your mind, you don't deal with bougie people. Do you work on a job? Do you go to the grocery store? Yeah, you do. You potentially deal with bougie people at the grocery store. You potentially deal with bougie people as your waiter or waitress. You potentially, whatever you think that means at this point, you are dealing with poor man mentality, short man mentality. You're dealing with all these mentalities all the time. And just when it comes to certain people, we use the label to give us permission to distance ourselves from those people. let me rewind that. So when it comes to certain people, we'll pull up one of these labels to give ourselves permission to distance ourselves. Oh, I don't like to deal with people like that. I don't like to deal with people who are XYZ. So I give myself permission not to deal with them. And immediately you see an erosion, which is why we can't get it together. See? We can't really come together. I did a whole broadcast almost a year ago, 5 months? 7 months ago, asking the question, remember, can people who are not like-minded live in the same community? You remember that one? I was talking about, I did a series of broadcasts on community, and I asked the question, can people who are not like-minded, don't have the same mentality, live in the same community? I'm not going to go back to that broadcast, but I'm just bringing it back up. It's on my YouTube page. Feel free to take a look at it. I'll give you the link if you'd like to go look at it. It's on my Facebook page also. So why did I pose the question? For the same reason why I'm doing this. Because immediately, now don't get me wrong, there are some people who behave in such a way, i.e. criminal, where there's a place for them to dwell. And it's called prison. It's called jail. There's a mentality, there's a criminal mentality. Now notice that's not on my list. There's a criminal mentality, people who lie profusely, people who steal, who rob. There are people who are violent. Notice that's not on my list. I'm not talking about those things that are overtly almost impossible to deal with. I would never recommend somebody live in a criminal community. Work, yes. You probably took criminal justice classes and you work in some kind of environment like that. But to actually try to live in a criminal community, that's going to be really, really, really difficult. In a gang-riddled community, for example. But believe it or not, a ghetto community is not necessarily a criminal community. Uh-oh. I think I might have stepped on a toe. And if I did, put the other 4 out so I can step on the whole foot. See, some people are under the impression if it's a ghetto community, then it's automatically a crime-riddled community. So when I moved here back to Louisiana, oh, you know me, I'll talk about me. So when I moved back to Louisiana, and I moved to Bossier City in particular, and I came to live in the Barksdale Annex, some call the Jackson Quarters, when I would tell longtime residents of this area where I lived, they couldn't even hide their face. They couldn't hide their face. This is white, this is black, this is Hispanic, it didn't matter. Oh, Gabe, where you live? Oh, I live in the Barksdale Annex. I didn't know it was called Jackson Quarters. I live in the Barksdale Annex. You do? Oh, I wouldn't live over there. Oh, it's crime riddled. No, it's not. No, it's not. I've lived there almost 3 years. My son is 10 feet away from me, 15 feet away from me. I've lived there almost 3 years. Now, I'm not saying there's been no criminal activity, but I suspect we've had as much criminal activity here as any other place. But, oh, I used to live over in that neighborhood when? Oh, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and boy, it was really bad. Now, don't get me wrong. It is a impoverished area. Don't get me wrong. It is categorically in what most people call ghetto. It is ghetto in its appearance. It's ghetto in its social economic disposition, but it is not criminal. I just stepped on so many feet right there. I don't even know if I'm gonna have an audience after this, because so many of us are programmed to think if something looks run down or if something doesn't look quite as rich and up as we think it is, then it is automatically ghetto and potentially dangerous and criminal. Bam. See the problem with the mentality labels that we throw around? See the problem? See, there's an issue immediately because we say something that looks run down is automatically, quote, ghetto. And it's funny because when I looked at the article about the ghetto, the writer referenced the song, The Ghetto, doom, 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 doom. Oh, some of you remember that, I'm sure. The Ghetto, talking about the ghetto, right? So let me just, I'm not going to read it, but let me just take a look at something real quick. And I agree, my brother, way too much division, but I understand, like I said, some division is kind of natural, some division is necessary, but I'm talking about division that comes from assumption. That's what this broadcast is about. So if you expecting something else, feel free to go ahead and get you some rest, go watch you some TV, whatever you're going to do this evening. I understand this is only for those who've got the palate to be able to handle it. And I understand that's not everybody. But here's what I find so interesting in regards to Ghetto. Now, I love the picture of the gentleman because that's some of the stuff I see in my neighborhood. Now, of course, for those who listen to me, those who've gotten to know me, I don't sound like someone who lives in this kind of situation. I don't sound like a person who lives in a neighborhood with rundown homes and abandoned homes. I don't sound like someone, see, quotes, I don't sound like, I don't carry myself like someone who would live in the neighborhood I live in. But I do. And I'm safe to walk around outside any time of day or night. Again, I've been here for years. And I find it so, and I even thought it was a contrast. I'll be honest. When I got here, I was like, it's economically what I can handle, but I don't know. I don't know. Interesting. So understand, now in the Urban Dictionary, right, if you saw that article I posted, you'll see it gets into, watch this now, someone who spends, watch this, this is not what we think when we say ghetto, someone who spends all their money on useless or depreciating items instead of saving or investing. Typically, they buy nice things to try to signal to others that they are rich when they actually come off as poor to those who actually are rich. That is the ghetto mentality. That's the ghetto mentality. That's the ghetto mentality. People who are buying things who cannot afford them because they're trying to give off the impression that they are really rich when they are not. That is actually ghetto. Oops. You thought ghetto mentality was, oh, somebody who don't cut their grass. That's ghetto. They don't cut their grass. They may not have a lawnmower. Now again, I think they ought to cut their grass. Oh, I think they ought to live like this. I think they ought to have more care and concern for the economic. Let me tell you something that I learned when I moved here. Watch this. One of the city employees for Bossier City, Louisiana, which is where I live, he told me, because the gentleman that was living next to me, I've had 4, 5 different people live next to me in terms of groups of people. And so when I got here, was a young man, probably no more than, looked like his 20s, okay? Quiet, no kind of trouble, seemed to take care of business, but he had his car, got one of those slips on it, you know, the ones you don't want to get, and he had it parked, and the city of Bossier put the slip, said, hey man, you either got to get this thing fixed or you got to get it moved. So I had my car in the way. I had to go out and move my car so that they could tow it because he abandoned the house, excuse me. He abandoned the house. He abandoned the car. So the city came to get it. I'm standing there talking to the gentleman, and he told me that in fact where I live is not some of the worst places in terms of the quality of home. Watch this. He has had to go into places where people were paying $100 a month, and there was big holes in the walls, there was holes in the floor, they didn't have heating because they were poor. They were poor it's likely that if you and I drove by their neighborhood and drove by their house, we would call them ghetto. But he said he understood and he would try to help them because he understood that they didn't have the economic resources to be able to do better than what they were doing. They had an opportunity to not have to live on the street. And unfortunately, due to slumlords who were taking advantage of them, they moved them into places that was not even up to code. And he had to unfortunately evict them. But this was the way they were staying off the street. But we would come by and call them ghetto, when in fact, they don't have the economic resources to be able to do better. But we would be quick because we would see their lawn not cut. They're barely trying to eat. They're living in a place with no heat, but it's better than being outside in the cold or under the sun, especially in Louisiana. And so they move into a place because a landlord says, sure, come on in for $100, knowing that he or she has not even got the place up to code. Are they actually ghetto? No. Are they poor? Yes. But we would throw a label on them because, notice what I said in my description, this ain't really social psychological labels, or clinical labels, excuse me. These are social labels. These are cultural labels. This is what we throw out when we look at people's lives from a distance and we say things to them and about them. But the ghetto mentality, according to the Urban Dictionary, is actually somebody trying to live like they're rich and they're poor. And they go on to give examples of rappers and some other things who are wearing bling and know they can't afford it and doing all of that kind of thing. I'll leave that to you to read for yourself. Okay, well, how about the poor man? I thought this one was pretty interesting as well. How about the poor man? The poor man. Now, if you notice my description there, I'll read it quickly. Poverty traits. This is the mentality of a person who has poverty issues. Watch this. Do you have some of these qualities of a poverty mentality? Feel guilty as soon as you buy something. Being constantly worried about money or thinking about it often. Having a strong dislike of rich people, yet wanting to be just like them. Oh, I'm going to read that one again. Having a strong dislike of rich people, yet wanting to be just like them. Watch this one. Watch this one. Making decisions based on fear. Thinking small rather than thinking big. This is just some of the symptoms of a poverty mentality, of a poverty way of thinking. This is a person who in some sense actually loathes money. When you say money to them, they cringe. A poverty mentality is not somebody who is actually poor. If you note, I didn't say that. A person with a poverty mentality may actually be rich or well off. See? You never know what you're going to get with me. You never know. So a person suffering with a poverty mentality is a person feeling guilty as soon as they buy something. Now, if they're wealthy, this is what we call them. Stingy. We call them stingy. And to some extent, they may seem to be stingy. And they fight their stinginess by trying to do things, by trying to buy things. But what we never stop to realize is the reason why it's so difficult is because they have a poverty mentality and they feel bad soon as they spend money. This is the kind of person you and I end up talking to going, do something for yourself. You think I should? Come on, treat yourself. Go out to dinner, girl. Man, go get you some shoes, man. Oh, yeah, you think I should? Yeah, I don't really do much for myself. That's a person with a poor man or poverty mentality. I'm gonna just let this stuff sink in. Making decisions based on fear. Rainy day, a rainy day. Gotta save for a rainy day. Gotta save for a rainy day. Hey man, it's raining. Well, I gotta save for a sunny day. Hey man, it's sunny. Well, I gotta save for a snowy day. This is a person who, when it comes to money, I'm gonna try not to do this because I don't like to minister on Thursday. But let me just tell you what I know from my ministry background. A lot of times, this is a person as a child who grew up in a household with a stingy person. Or they grew up in a household with a person with a similar mentality. And so it becomes inborn in them. In other words, nature nurture, right? This is a person who's told, hey, you know what? We didn't have a lot. We don't have a lot now. Now, you know, it's a pandemic now. Now, you know, you might get sick. You might get sick. So you better be ready. What's your 401k? It's gonna be hard to bury you. You know, it costs a lot for a funeral. Man, it costs a lot for a casket. Man, just put me over in a box. Don't worry about me. Poverty. Poor man mentality. Gabe, you better stop meddling. No, I'm not gonna stop. This is the person, and I was this person, which is why I love this one. I was this. You make a little money. Now my father taught me, hey, spend a little bit on yourself. Don't put every dime to a bill. Don't do that. Spend a little bit for yourself. Some people call it splurge. I can't even use the word splurge because I'm still struggling with the mentality. I love my mother dearly, but I'll be honest, I got it from her. I got it from her. So what would happen is she would try to course correct and go way too far. So she would go with hey, you know, you never know, to now I gotta break out and go all the way the other way. All the way the other way. So what you find is that if you are listening to me going, I think I suffer from that one, track your childhood. Go back in your mind. Did you have a parent that was really tight with money? Did you have one of those parents that if they saw a penny, they would, hey, a penny saved is a penny earned. A penny saved is a penny earned. They're not going to do anything with that penny. You know it. I know it. We all know it. But they see a penny. I got to get that penny. I got to get that penny. Hey, because you never know. Rainy day. Sunny day. Snowfall day. Hey, that penny right there is the first penny for your retirement. Well, you got a whole lot of pennies to collect. Again, feeling guilty as soon as they buy something. Being constantly worried about money or thinking about it often. I do not worry about money. We all need it. I don't worry about it. It comes. I have a budget. I do what I gotta do, and I go about my business. Oh, I wonder if check my accounts. Let me check it again. You know, this is the same person that probably goes to the refrigerator, looks in, doesn't see anything they want. 10 minutes later, let me go to the refrigerator, look in, doesn't see anything they want. 20 minutes later, go to the refrigerator. We're not just here. It ain't gonna be nothing in the refrigerator if you don't put nothing in it. This is a person checking, and now we got these apps, right? We got these apps on our phone. We got our banking apps. We constantly logging into them every day, checking them. Again, this could be a person who's well off, but they're always, okay, that's the same balance. Yeah, that's the same balance. Yep, that's it. All right, I'm okay. I'm good now. That's the same balance. Woo, that's the same balance. If something gets taken out, maybe they forget a bill was supposed to come out. What? They call in the bank. Hey, I see $2. Take it out my account. Sir, that's our monthly withdrawal fee. Oh, okay. Because I was about to show up to the bank. Boy. Woo. They spend the rest of the day complaining about bank fees. Short man. Now, I had the interesting pleasure when I worked in a group home back in 1996. Seemed like a long time ago now, right? 1996. And there was a little guy who came, who was in the group home. Now, he's a teen boy, well, 12 to 18. I can't remember his age now. Of course, all of these guys are grown. It's 25 years ago. So hopefully they're still alive. And they're definitely very grown. And he walked around there, and he had little Popeye arms. Aaron Towers, I don't know if you still watch it, but I don't know if you remember him. He had them little Popeye arms. Now, they also refer to this as the He-Man complex or He-Man mentality as well. But the short man or Napoleon mentality. And you find this a lot when you're watching men in particular. They don't really say about women, but men in particular. It's not a machismo thing. In fact, it is a competitive thing. It is an aggressive thing. And if you read the article I posted, there were some good articles. I posted that one because they did a survey and they had teams and they did a competition and all this kind of thing. I won't go into that one, but very interesting. Very interesting indeed. The short man. Now, obviously, that's not going to be something suffered by a lot of people. And Kevin Hart has made a whole career of playing off his shortness, right? As a part of what he does. But the Napoleon, and if you know anything about Napoleon and his miserable career, it's called the Napoleon complex. And this is what I mean by some of these come with very real mental disorder. Well, that young man, of course he's a grown man now, got into a fight with one of the clients, and because he had to prove himself. It's a constant need to be proving yourself, and he got into the fight with the wrong kid, who he didn't know had a mental situation, and it got really, really, really interesting. That's all I'll say. And Mr. Townsend was there with me that night, and it got very interesting. We had to call the police. And there was some pepper spray and eyes burning and walls were stained, and it got really bad because of his short man mentality. Now, as grown men and women, we run into this stuff. If you go to the gym, if you work out, you may see it. You see the short guy walking around, like this, and he may or may not have muscles, but he just feel the need to have his arms bowed out like this, And as funny as that may seem, and we kind of again want to say short man's mentality, I wouldn't be so quick to say that. Again, I would read the article. I'll get even to you. I'd read the article because again, there's a whole lot more going on. This person is not just simply short. This is a person who tends to be very aggressive, and they tend to be very aggressive in the presence of other men, especially men who are taller, right? So when it starts coming out is when they are dealing with situations that may not require aggression. And let me just say to women who don't have a problem with dating and marrying men who are shorter, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Nothing wrong with that. My father's what, 5'5", 5'6", great man, great guy. I got my height from my mother's side of the family. But the reality of it is he doesn't have this short man's mentality. You see this with men who, again, have a tendency to get very aggressive around other males. So that can become a very dangerous kind of mentality. And typically we don't misdiagnose that one, even in a cultural sense, because we can tell not only just walking around like this, but he's always ready. Now, if you bump into him, he, what? Because I'm short? That's the kind of thinking that person has. And I don't know if women suffer from it. I know I've always heard it connected to men, but I'll move on. I made a comment about bougie. right? And you see the lady on my page, I'm bougie, oh well. What I find so interesting about this, and I actually had to look up how to pronounce this, that word bougie actually comes from the French term, but now I forgot how to say it. So, but I want you to notice in my post, it actually stands for a middle class status. I thought this was fascinating because most of the time, at least when I hear somebody use bougie, and I'll be honest, I know a lot of women in particular who call themselves, so we got one short man, that's men. Well, this one tends to be used for women and maybe men of a certain disposition. We won't get into that. But typically, I hear women who say, I've been called bougie. And a lot of times, it is used in reference to because I like nice things. But in fact, the word bourgeoisie, I believe is how you say it, is actually dealing with, the original word is dealing with middle class status. I'm telling you, man, we just say stuff. We hear a word and we start using it, and we get whatever the meaning is given at the moment we hear it. We assume that they're using it correctly, and we just run with it. So we're labeling people bougie because they got a cord purse or whatever. They're wearing some nice clothes, driving a nice car. So we immediately just go, oh, that person must be bougie. That person must be bougie. Because they like to shop and they like to do all these kinds of things. I would venture to say, if that person does those things, but they don't have the means, that's a person we've already talked about who has a poverty mentality, not a bougie mentality. And I have found, obviously I'm not going to say anybody's name, I have found more often than not, that often is the case. Now there are some people who can buy the purses and buy the shoes and do all of that, and it doesn't hurt them. So my thing is, do your thing. But I have come across, and I say this so respectfully, a few ladies, more than a few. Let me fix that. I've come across more than a few ladies who, while they're talking about the purse and the shoes, here's what they say: I really can't afford this. I'm gonna let that sink in. I really cannot afford this. I can't afford this, but I just gotta have it. That is what we've already talked about. That's a person who actually, was it poor man or ghetto? No, ghetto. That's the ghetto mentality. That's actually ghetto. I love it. I love it. That's actually a ghetto mentality by definition. Think about it. We're calling that person bougie, when in fact, by definition, they're ghetto. Because they're trying to acquire things and go on trips and do all of it. No, yeah, poverty is different. Yeah, this is a person who has a ghetto mentality because they're trying to come off and appear with their goods as being middle class. Get it? As being middle class, or they're middle class, and trying to look like they're first class. They're trying to look like they're wealthy. And they have the nerve to talk crazy. Oh yeah, I got that same purse. I got it at a discount store and it looks just like theirs. Theirs ain't better than mine, and I only spent $50. They spent $5,000. Anybody do this anymore? I don't even know this. Is this still in? Popping collars and all this kind of stuff. So that's actually more ghetto. That's actually more ghetto. Go figure, right? That's actually ghetto. 15 minutes left, last two, and I'm done. Now, if there's more that I haven't thought about, put it in the comment section. I can look it up real quick and comment on it. But these are the ones I've thought about. The last two that I think are just so absolutely special. Entitlement. Oh yes, entitlement, ladies and gentlemen. Now this one is going to probably not be fun for some. Entitlement is a narcissistic personality trait. It's not known exactly how this mentality develops. It may be due to some social factors, the environment they grew up in, the way the parents treated you or treated them, and whether adults solve your problems for you. How you are treated by authority figures. Now, obviously, some of you, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, if you loved him as a politician, that's your business. But I don't think anyone can deny this. And since his niece, who is a clinical psychiatrist, actually flat out wrote a book about it, Donald Trump. Now you've been hearing him being called a narcissist for years. Exactly. That's a great description. Keeping up with the Joneses for the ghetto mentality. You've been hearing Mr. 45 be called a narcissist all this time. Now think about what I just said and what we know about his upbringing. The environment he grew up in. His father gave him ultimately $410 million and allowed him to claim his own properties. He claimed his father's properties as his own. The way your parent treats you. His father treated him better than his brother Fred Trump. Whether adults solve your problems for you. He gave him $410 million to fund his failing business ventures. And every time he got into hot water, his father bailed him out. How you are treated by authority figures. Has anybody been watching what the GOP has been doing? How these people in authority are treating Mr. Trump? Yeah, I call him Mr. Has anyone been watching how those people in authority have been kissing his rear compartment? I don't care if you like the dude. That dude is suffering from an entitlement mentality. I can't pick a better example than Mr. Donald J. Trump, 45. The 45th president of the United States. I don't think I know anyone who fits that bill better than that man. And I'm not even harshly judging him. He carries himself as one who is entitled. Find the votes. We all heard him say it when he called the man in Georgia. Hey man, all I need is 11,618 votes. That's all I need. Entitled. Hey, won't you go ahead and do that for me? Entitled. Look at his children. Somebody tell me I'm wrong. Come on, give me one of them Trump supporters that say, Gabe, you're just being a hater. Tell me that he doesn't fit that definition to the T. He is a classic narcissist to the letter. And I want you to notice, I intentionally selected an article from the WebMD. WebMD, a reputable, I've actually used that website to deal with some medical issues I had. And it worked. To identify symptoms. And it worked. WebMD published that article. Not Gabe, not somebody out there who's a hater. They didn't mention Donald Trump in the article, if I remember correctly. But come on, tell me there's a greater example. Nobody? Yes? No? Look, now, let me leave him alone. The reality of it is, I've run into this particular mentality many times. Many times. I deserve. Now I'm going to get in trouble. But it's okay. I have come across, I'm a single man. I have come across a few women in my 6 years, as of Sunday, of being single, right? And in my nobody's name, so if you identify yourself, that's on you. In my conversations with some of these lovely, wonderful women, I have heard things like, I deserve a good man. I deserve a relationship like this. Gabe, why can't I get what I want? Now, I understand if you would like to be in a relationship with a good man. I suspect that men would agree they would like to be in a relationship with a good woman. Whatever you define that to be, it's fine. But the notion that you deserve it, and I always ask questions like, on what basis? On what basis do you deserve a relationship with a good man? Because the last man wasn't good, therefore you deserve? Like, where do you get that from? Where do you go to get that? In your way of thinking? Your mentality tells you that you deserve. Being in a bad relationship doesn't merit you a good. I did a whole broadcast on that, so we're not going back through that. But let me say it one more again. And if you stop being my Facebook friend, it was lovely having you. Thank you for coming. Please leave a tip with your waitress. The reality of it is, none of us deserve a human being. None of us deserve a human being. We treat people how we want to be treated. We don't treat people how we want to be treated to automatically merit getting certain things. Now this is perfect because it goes right into nice guy. Now I know nice guys finish last and all of that stuff. Watch this. I left this one for last. Nice guy syndrome, and I'll post this article after. Here's what it says. In the, once again, Urban Dictionary. The spectrum of social disorder. Listen. The spectrum, nice guy syndrome. The spectrum of social disorder that makes a man think he's entitled to date or have sexual relations with women simply because he sees himself as a good person. You want me to read it again? I'll read it again. A spectrum. Now, of course, I'm a psychology major and I don't want to get into spectrum. A spectrum of social disorder. Social disorder that makes a man think he's entitled to date or have sexual relations with women simply because he sees himself as a good person. And there are levels to this, and I won't read the whole article, I'll just post it so you can see it. Ladies and gentlemen, there are men out there who are under the impression that if they just be nice, you're going to do whatever they want you to do. Now, for years, we talked about nice guys. You know, the quiet guy who never wins and nobody likes them and nobody cares and listens. And I'm sure there are guys like that out there. Don't get me wrong. But what's so interesting is, notice, this is a social disorder. This is not just simply a nice guy who tried to talk to a woman and she said, well, I'm not interested. And he said, oh, okay, thank you. And went on about his business. I've had conversations again with my fair share of women over the years. No doubt about that. With my fair share of women over the years, just having conversation. And here's what I've heard many times. You know, Gabe, I was talking to this guy. He seemed like a nice guy. Has anyone ever heard that? I've heard it hundreds of times. He seemed like a nice guy at first, but then he went, and I won't get into any descriptions because of my son. He seemed like a nice guy, But as we got closer, he became possessive, jealous. He seemed to change. Anybody? Hello? Anybody? And fellas, you probably dealt with this kind of guy too. He seems really unassuming. He's very, very low key. Great guy. But if you seem to not let him get his way, if he doesn't seem to get your approval, he'll flip. He'll flip. I saved this one for last because this is the one that most of us probably don't recognize most of the time. When people call me a nice guy, and while I am respectful and all those things, the reality of it is sometimes I hear a tinge of what I call pigeonholing. And what I mean by pigeonholing is they're calling me a nice guy really with the intent to try to put me into a specific mold in their mind. So then when I'm speaking in my normal tone, like I'm speaking now, and if I say something strongly, clutch my pearls. Oh my word. I can't believe, Gabe, you just seem like such a nice guy. That's the flip side of this. That's the flip. I am a nice guy. I'm respectful. It doesn't mean that I cannot speak strongly and intensely about something I have conviction over. Even if you think it's just something I should just blow off and don't sweat the small stuff and everything is small stuff, well, I'm sorry. I have some things I'm very passionate about, very intense about. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the nice guy who carries themselves in this such a way. This is the guy on the job that everybody, hey, Bobby, can you come over here? And yeah. And he definitely wants to help his female coworkers, right? That's the guy who wants to help the female coworker. Now he seems really nice and he's always volunteering. And I know I'm talking to somebody. This is the guy who is always volunteering to help, certain female coworkers, right? He seems to always be in that spot to be helping them. Just whenever. Well, Gabe, he might have some interest. Yeah, cool. But as time goes on, if she picks up on it and says, hey, thanks, Bobby, thanks. But I'm not really interested. I'm actually talking to somebody. He'll treat her like crap. He'll just flip. He'll just flip. Oh, did you think it was because I liked you? Oh no, I just try to do something for a nice lady. I mean, I don't know why women don't just step on me. Step on you? Where'd that come from? Yep, see, they say nice guys. That's reverse psychology. Uh-oh, I just did it again. I stepped on somebody's toes. It's one thing to carry yourself as a gentleman. It's another thing, watch this now, to be constantly talking about the fact that you're a gentleman. To be constantly talking about how nice you are. How socially acceptable you. It's when you keep talking about yourself, dude. It's when you keep talking about why you deserve a woman like Sally. And I'm going to say it, and I know ain't nobody going to like it, but Sally ain't your type. Sally has a different kind of preference. And Sally appreciates your kindness. And she expressed, oh, wait a minute, Gabe, you're talking about potential stalkers. That's why I saved this one. Because this is the one who becomes the potential stalker. This is the one who comes in, ladies, buying gifts for your children and for your grandchildren and doesn't even know them. And you feel a little uncomfortable with it. And you just know that's really nice, but that seems to be a little too much. that's just a little too much. It's the guy who's ready to come on the first time you meet, and you're just standing there talking at the grocery store, and you say, oh yeah, you know, I gotta go and I gotta get my grass cut. Oh, I'll cut it. Oh yeah. I mean, I gotta cut my mom's grass. Okay, where does your mom live? Way on the other side of town? Oh, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. I'll be at your house. Where do you live? No, ladies, listen. This is why I say this one for last. No. But Gabe, he's a nice guy. I'm laughing, but in real truth, you know this is uncomfortable, because I imagine most of you ladies have run into this guy. This is the guy ready to pay your bills and you barely know him. And you might be sitting there thinking, oh, I really need those bills paid, Gabe. Hey, that's your business. You do what you want. But notice what I said. This person is dealing with a social disorder. Just like the narcissist, just like the entitlement disorder, or excuse me, entitlement mentality, who has a narcissistic personality. This person with the nice guy syndrome, the nice guy social disorder, this guy can often be very polite in the beginning. But if there's any sign that you're going to reject any of his advances, ladies, I love you. I'm over my time, but let me make sure this is abundantly clear. Yes, Gabe, well, what do? We want to get to know a nice guy. Absolutely. But be mindful. Let me do it again. If they keep going on and on and on about how nice they are, how much they're willing to do, man, they'll almost just about die to help you. Oh, it's no problem at all. Yeah, it is a problem, buddy, because we don't know each other. And you're going way too hard, way too fast. Now watch this, ladies. This is the person, notice what I read, who tries to use their niceness as a means of saying there should be some intimate interaction. Now he's so nice, you'll go out on a date with him. Of course, he's nice. He's opening the doors. He's buying your food. He's so nice, Gabe. He's so nice. And when the date's over, he opens the door and you get in, and it's just so wonderful. And then you get a text on the way home that you read hopefully when you get home and not before. And he says, oh, I enjoyed myself. You're like, oh, I did too. He's like, yeah, I did too. But as you keep reading the texts, they keep coming. All right, I'm going to bed. Okay, yeah, okay, sleep well. But you get another one. I know you say you were going to bed, but I just wanted to say, but also I just wanted to say, that dress you had on was great. Okay, thank you for the compliment. Thank you. An hour later, you're half asleep, and you're a notification. I just can't stop thinking about you. Oh, that is so nice. That is so, ladies, bless your hearts. I know you want a nice guy, right? You want a guy that treats you with respect, but let me help you. Let me do my job as your friend, as your brother. I love you. Nice guys don't mean in this sense that just because their personification is nice, that their intention is right. We have to always, now again, I don't like to be quoting scripture here, but be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Be nice to this guy. But don't be afraid to either cut him off or say, hey, you know what? I appreciate the compliments. I definitely appreciate the offers. You are, man, you are great. And be careful. Any woman would want you. You know what the problem with saying that? No, I'm going to have to do it. I'm trying not to. I'm sorry, ladies. I got to do it. Stop making statements like any woman would want you when you know you don't want him. That's a lie. You know you don't want him, but then you lie and say, any woman would want you. Hello? Any woman would want you, Bobby. Well, he's coming after you. And you told him any woman would want you because you're so nice. Do you understand? You're feeding the social disorder. Do you understand, ladies? I'm not blaming you for his actions, but I'm telling you, do not feed that. Accept the compliment, go on. Accept the compliment, go on. But the reason why you would make the statement is because you realize that the man is trying to get more out of you than just taking you on a nice outing or talking to you on the phone or sending you a text message. He's clearly trying to get something else, and if you don't want to give that and he's not bagging up, why are you still calling him nice? I don't want to hurt his feelings. Do you understand how these men are able to end up in situations with women where they can harm them, where they can stalk them, where they can mistreat them? Does it make sense to you now? You are feeding the social disorder trying to be nice yourself. I love you. I'm not mad at you. I care about you. I have a sister. She's single. I would tell her the same thing. And she's come across this, unfortunately, as well. It is one thing when they are respectful. If they are truly nice, let me use a different word, if they are truly gentlemen, I want to make a distinction between the likes of myself and my brother Nate Jones. If they are gentlemen, they will respect your request for distance. They will respect when you say, hey, thank you for the compliment, but, I'm a little uncomfortable. They'll respect that. They'll respect it. I've had women tell me that. I'm not above hearing it. Well, Gabe, you know what? I want to be respected for more than just my physical appearance. I want to be respected for, so if I'm going to compliment her again, guess what? That compliment, I better look deeper and see if she's got some substance and compliment her substance. Or shut up. That's a gentleman. That's a true gentleman. But a nice guy can be putting on a facade. He's carrying himself that way because it's a manipulative game. There it is. I try not to go there. But the truth of the matter is he's a manipulator. And he's playing nice. And he's playing sweet. Because he's trying to get to a location. I have to keep this like this. So ladies, I just want to give you another caution. And I'm sure there's a word for women on the end who do some of the same things, but I didn't find it. This is what I have. Nice. It's called The Nice Guy. And I put a movie in parentheses, Hitch. Because Hitch deals with that nice guy that most of us think. One of my favorite movies. Will Smith. The notion that he's just really, really nice but timid. And if you just give him a chance, he'll be a really great guy. Isn't that movie so wonderful? Oh, it's wonderful, isn't it? But the fact is, there are many men who would use a hitch. Now, they had a guy who was a narcissist and an entitlement. But the fact is, there are a lot of guys who don't come off as entitled. There are a lot of guys who come off very sweet. But when you get close enough, they are actually entitled. And they think their niceness in particular entitles them to what is not theirs. That you should give it up. I had a guy, and I'm done, years ago, who wanted to pitch to me a business proposition. I was in California, obviously. This is before I got married, before my son was born. This was a long time ago. And he wanted to pitch to me a business opportunity, so he invited me to lunch. I said, okay. I went, sat down with him. We talked. He paid. I said, hey, man, thank you very much. He said, oh, you're welcome. long after that, he contacted me and told me, hey man, I took you to lunch. You should take me to lunch. Let me get my wallet out. Now, obviously the man didn't know me, so I cut him a break. I don't normally do that because you don't get to decide my money. You don't get to decide what I do with my money. But the dude took me to lunch because he wanted to talk to me about his business venture and then have the audacity, nice guy, right, to contact me and more than suggest that I owed him a lunch. Needless to say, I have never spoken to him since. Point blank. You don't play games like that with me. Now, I'm a man. But I can only imagine, ladies, when you come across a guy like that, because he's what I'm talking about. He's that nice guy who has that piece that's entitlement. He did me a gesture when in fact the only reason why I got the lunch was because he wanted to talk about his thing. He didn't ask me nothing about me. He wanted to talk about him. This was, I think, 20 years ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, that kind of guy, that nice guy mentality, the guy who will extend the invitation, the guy who will invite you to the barbecue, but he's got some other thing he thinks he should get out of you. You know, great salesman, kind of, sort of. These are the ones that work, and I'm not saying everybody is like this, but these are those guys, when I see them at the car dealership, and they walk up to me and, hey man, hey buddy, I tell them point blank, I already know what I'm looking for. Thank you. Oh, okay. Because I don't want you to be nice to me in this conversation and think that merits that you should get a sale. Because you spent 20 minutes of your precious time trying to get a sale out of me. And I was just humoring you because you came up to me. But now, because you were such a nice salesperson for so long trying to get this sale, now you think you should be entitled to my money on your product. H-E-double-L, no. Now I spelled it. But you know what I meant. Listen. This person is, to me, at the top of the ladder. Because they bring in the entitlement piece. They bring that entitlement piece in. And ladies, this person is the one who becomes the stalker. The guy who's mean and just kind of a jerk up front, you just blow him off, I hope. But this guy is the guy who becomes the stalker. This guy is the guy who has that seabed of jealousy that you don't get to see in the beginning. He hides it very well. This is the guy who, once he thinks he's got you close enough, he becomes very possessive. Be mindful of that guy. Again, one last time, you're looking for the guy who's respectable and respectful. Not just the guy who has a very nice veneer, but the guy who will, when you say, they go, I gracefully bow out. They get out of your way. They get out. Now, my advice is don't play games with anybody. Because if you're playing games with people and they have one of these mentalities, especially that nice guy and entitled mentality, you're gonna run up on somebody that's gonna hurt you. And I don't care how tough you think you are. My father taught me this, and with this we close. Gabe, there's always someone out there bigger, badder, worse than you. Hope this has been a help. Share it out on your page. Until next week, let's chat.